Everybody, welcome back. I'm the Strategy Professor, and today we're going to be doing an AD carry tier list for patch 12.14. So as always, if you enjoy the content, please be sure to like and subscribe. It really helps out a ton on the channel. Check out the support tier list. If you haven't checked that out already, I'll put a link to that in the upper right of your screens. Be sure to check that out if you're interested. And we stream every night, usually starting around 10 or 11 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, going until about 2 or 3 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. It's a very friendly, chill community. We'd love to see you. And let's go ahead and get in here. And before anyone asks, this blue icon here is just Neela. Just this pre-made tier maker thing that I have. Doesn't have a picture of Neela. It's a little outdated. So I just threw that in there. So that is Neela as a placeholder. Okay. I know I'm still going to get people to ask me that in the comments. But that's what that is. Okay, so let's go ahead and get in here. Obviously, Sivir, number one. I mean, I don't think that's a surprise to anyone. The champion is just really, really overpowered right now in solo queue. She just has way too much utility now, way too much damage. I'm really shocked they didn't nerf her because she's already been this way for a patch. And she's just head and shoulders above everybody else. So you should pretty much play Sivir every matchup, every time, if you have a chance. Most of the ADCs just do not have a great win rate right now. I would say the tier 1 and tier 2s, most of them are like in that 51-52% win rate, and Sivir's like pushing 54. So what is it about her that makes her so strong? Well, I just listed a few things, but specifically it is the change to her W to where it now lasts for 4 seconds. I believe it used to last for 3 or 4 auto attacks, and now it lasts for 4 seconds. So if you have more attack speed, and she also gets attack speed on those. I don't think that's what she got before. I think the attack speed was on her ult. Not 100% about that. But she gets bonus attack speed, and she's able to have those bounces. They can bounce back to the same person also. So if you throw it at 2 people, I think it can do it twice. Can hit the same target a maximum of 2 times. So now it can bounce twice. So if people are stacked up, it's 2-on-2 bot lane. It can go hit the first target, bounce, hit the second one, hit the first one again, go back and hit the second one again for each auto. So that's a really big deal. That's a lot of extra damage when there aren't minions around, especially. So that's just really, really powerful. And they lowered the cost on Ricochet. It used to be 75 flat at all ranks, and now it's 60. So she doesn't have as many mana problems, and she doesn't even have to go tier anymore. She goes crit instead. I believe the boomerang can crit. The cast time scales down on bonus attack speed, so it goes faster, and it can crit. It did not used to be able to crit, so now this thing can crit, which gives it even better wave clear, gives it even a lot more damage when you just hit people with it, particularly if you're able to crit with it. So that's huge. The spell shield is kind of whatever. It gives you back health now instead of mana, which in a team fight, that's going to be a lot more important to be able to get that health back. In the laning phase, you'd probably prefer the mana in most situations just to keep pushing, but it still blocks incoming engage, so still going to be fantastic against Nautilus, Leona, just any number of engaged champions. So that alone makes her a lot safer than most ADCs. And the fact that she has such great wave clear, her passive, I don't think it lists it here. Yeah, there it is. So it gives her a lot of movement speed, basically 55 to 75 extra movement speed whenever she's auto-attacking people, so she can run people down or she can kite. And then you have her ultimate, which still gives the movement speed, does not give the attack speed anymore. Yes, they moved that over to the W instead. But it lasts for a long time, and it resets. And Sivir's basic attacks against champions while on the hunt is active reduces her ability cooldown about point. I didn't even realize it did that. That's like insanely powerful. So every auto attack now reduces the cooldown on your W, your spell shield, your Q. She's just getting bonuses all over the place, and it resets. So if you take down, it resets the duration, so your entire team gets to keep a little mini Shirelias the entire time, and you're resetting all of your other cooldowns. It's just ridiculous. Like, she just does way too much damage in team fights. It's really hard to interact with her in lane because she's just going to push you under tower over and over again. And if you try to engage on her, she's got the spell shield and she can kite you back with her passive, even pre-6. And then later in the game, you just have all these bounces going around with your W, your Q can crit, and people just can't push in to end the game. Even if you're behind, you can still wave clear one lane really easily, especially if non-baroned minions. So it makes it very hard to get a big wave together so that people can maybe dive you. And again, it's the same issue where you have a spell shield if they try to dive you, and you have lots of movement speed, so good luck. So she's just incredibly powerful right now in the current meta. And like I said, I mean, just these numbers, just look at this chart. Whenever they reworked her, she went from an obscure champion that was never played all the way up to like one of the most powerful champs in the whole game. So not a lot to be said there. I don't think there needs to be much more justification. I think every single tier list is going to have Sivir top of the line, and I'm pretty shocked that she wasn't nerfed more. I think they nerfed the mana cost on her W a little bit. Like it was 40 or something at the start. Now it's 60, which is still... I don't mind her having mana to wave clear. It's just, if you're going to give her the wave clear and you're going to give her that much utility on her ultimate, she needs to do a lot less damage. She needs to be like Ashe-esque, where it's like, okay, you've got all this cool stuff you can do. You have ways to sort of manage the battlefield with slows. You have a nice engage tool on your R, but you just don't scale as well as other champs in a lot of situations, whereas it's the opposite. She has some of the highest damage and some of the highest utility. Anyway, Sivir, OP, pick her if you can. Definitely consider banning her if you don't want to pick her. Misfortune is another one that I really like. I'm not sure how other tier lists are going to, rank her, but remember mine is primarily for like platinum, gold, silver, elo bracket, so you may not see her in pro. I haven't been watching pro as much recently, or challenger, but she's just a very good, simple ADC that performs really well in a lot of different environments. So she maxes out E these days, and you take Comet, and pretty much this is gonna almost guarantee that you win the lane phase in a lot of matchups, because you just put the E on them. It's going to guarantee that Comet hits them, especially against champions that don't have dashes. If they do have dashes, they're going to have to use their dash to get out of it, to dodge the Comet and to dodge the damage from Make It Rain. And if they do that, that's going to open up an opportunity for your support to engage on them if you have an engaged support. So it just puts them in a really rocky place where you're just consistently poking them out in the laning phase. It's fantastic wave clear, especially early on. It sets up for, if you have an engaged champ, for them to engage really easily. So you just do Make It Rain on somebody if they don't dash or they don't have a dash, and then your Nautilus goes in and hooks them, or your Leona or whatever. Or really good with Seraphine support too, because then they're slowed and they're going to get rooted by her E even with one stack on it. So just combos incredibly well with a lot of different champs out there. There's basically no way to interact with this ability. It's just point click, you're taking damage, and you're in trouble if you're vulnerable to an engaged champ at that moment. So really, really good laning phase. And then outside of that, she just has a lot of utility that's pretty strong too. The strut for the movement speed is huge, gives you really good back timings, so you can back on cannon, get your items, run back to the lane, push really quickly, and that'll give you priority on Dragon, or you can go with your support to get some good wards, or you can try to roam middle. There are a lot of different things you can do with all that extra movement speed. Or if you just push the wave in and you want to rotate mid or rotate to help your jungler or whatever, that extra movement speed obviously is going to be massive. I mean, even just 55 free movement speed out of combat is pretty crazy, and it gives you some extra attack speed. Now, you're probably not going to be auto-attacking a ton in most fights if they're going well, but still, it does help. Double up is also like pretty good poke, especially when you put them under tower and they just have to sit there and they're trying to focus on last hitting and they really can't play off the wave that much. Just being able to, get that double up and hit them for a ton of damage can be really useful. And then, of course, sort of her big teamfight contribution is the R. It has been buffed several times. It's not really giving you a lot of information there, but basically that translated, hell of a lot of damage. That's what that means. A lot of damage, 1500 range, huge arcing shot. So she just completely dominates 5v5 team fights compared to most other ADCs, especially early on in the game where people were wanting to group up for these dragons or Rift Heralds now a lot more than before because they're more valuable. She's just going to have the highest contribution with virtually no items off of that. You just make it rain on somebody, press R, and if you have any kind of front line, as long as they don't flank you and disrupt you, you're probably going to win the fight. So combos extremely well, obviously, with anything that can hold him still. Jarvan, Amumu, Rakan, Nautilus, Leona, just so many champions. Sona ultimate, Seraphine ultimate, Renata ultimate. I mean, just anything. She goes so well with any champion. So lane dominant, pretty high scaling, especially with the R. Basically a caster. If she has to auto attack tanks, that's bad. But if everyone's grouped up, especially a bunch of skinny champs just kind of A-ramming, then she's going to blow them away. And the build is just pretty much get a tier early, so you can just keep... I don't think you get it literally as your first item. I might be wrong about that. But hey, I guess some people are. It does have a higher win rate than Doran's Blade, and they have nerfed a lot of the healing. So yeah, I guess you can just go for it with tier. And then you want to try to get to... this item, Eclipse, as early as possible, because then you can just E plus R and you're going to get that bonus damage on him. And it gives you that armor penetration and the movement speed, which is, you know, what you want with your ultimate. And then obviously, Muramana, whenever that's available, is pretty good too. Then after that, probably Serelda's. It does add a slow to your ultimate. Now, usually you're going to have your E ticking on them when you ult as well, but for anyone that's like outside of your E range, the Serelda's is pretty handy, but you're mostly just looking for that AD, armor penetration, and ability haste. It's going to be pretty strong on her. So, nothing real new technology-wise. I just think that the heavy emphasis on the early game and the laning phase, the fact that sustain has been hit, that potions aren't as valuable and many of the runes aren't as valuable, people just aren't going to be able to deal with the make it rain spam with Comet, especially if you pair it with something else that also has... pretty good poke in the laning phase. So really good complement to a lot of team comps. You don't have to worry too much in team fights about people peeling you. I mean, like, obviously it's nice, but you don't have to like keep repositioning with your auto attacks and getting yourself close and stuff like that. You just hang out, you know, between 1200 and 1500 units away, just press R in a team fight once everybody's going and just watch the numbers fly off the charts. Okay, Jhin. Very similar to Misfortune as to why I like him, at least somewhat. So he has a really good laning phase. You'll notice that with a lot of these top picks. They have very good laning phases, very good wave clear. Jhin with the Q spam is going to be able to outpush most people, except for probably Sivir, probably Misfortune. But he does push really well, and kind of like Misfortune, he complements a lot of other supports very well. If you land your W on somebody and they're rooted, that's going to make them vulnerable to a Nautilus hook, Leona hook, you know, whatever. And so it just opens up really well with various combos. Your traps help if you want to push them in. It gives you a little bit more notice if someone's going to gank you. If you can put this in a couple of the popular bushes that people usually come through, that can be helpful. It can help you with some bush control in the lane as well if people are trying to come up the lane at you. So it's just pretty decent little utility. Does actually pretty good damage if they do get blown up by it. So if your Leona does CC, chain CC someone and you're able to get that trap to explode on them, it does some pretty good damage. But a lot of it also is his mobility. So the fact that he gets Boots of Swiftness, looks like people are going Dark Harvest. I've seen Fleet on him as well. But with that fourth shot, just allows you to reposition so well and just run people down late game every time you're landing those crits and you're getting that extra movement speed. It's pretty nice. And he scales very well with a lot of the different abilities in the game. And he really destroys squishy champions with the, you know, Gale Force in the fourth shot. Still catches people off guard. You know, does W, root somebody, Gale Force in the fourth shot. And then if they flash away, then you ultimate and try to kill them. So, very, very good against squishies in the laning phase. Lots of utility with the W, with the Q wave clear, with the ultimate to try to finish people. So, pretty high skill cap champ in general. Like, you need to be able to hit those ult shots. But, other than that, complements the early game domination playstyle. Okay, and then we have Kogmaw, who's a little bit different from the other ones. And this one might be the more controversial. I think a lot of tier lists are probably going to have... I mean, Sivir's definitely there. They'll probably have Misfortune there. Jhin, I really like Jhin. I could see other people maybe not doing it. But Kogmaw might seem a little strange. However, I just love Kogmaw with a lot of the different supports that are popular right now that are powerful. And he does have one of the highest win rates as well. I'm almost never feeling bad if I have a Kog on my team. Because he scales incredibly well off of just one item. Like, all he needs is Gensu's. And once he gets Gensu's, it's over. And it goes up from there. Like, one item, massive power spike, the way that Gensu's is budgeted right now. And then after that, he just scales to the moon. So they did nerf him a little bit. I think they took 0.5% off of his W a few patches ago. But I still think he's incredibly powerful. Obviously, a great lethal tempo abuser. In the laning phase, if his W is up, he trades pretty well. Like, he gets some nice range. He does quite a bit of damage as long as you're able to land multiple auto attacks. So if you have somebody that gets low, that can get them low, that can poke them low, a Zyra or a Brand or whatever, he can turn this on and run them down and just kind of push them out of the lane. He is going to be very vulnerable to all ends. He doesn't have a dash, so I would not necessarily recommend this against heavy dive comps. But if you're allowed to auto attack, then he can be pretty strong. And like I said, a lot of the power of him lies in his scaling and the budget of his items. So Gensu's is only 2,600 gold. Most ADC items are about 3,200, some of them 3,400 gold. And the fact that you can get this early and really leverage this with your W to do a ton of damage is one of his main strengths. Now, the second item, historically, has been Runins, because this gives you wave clear, and then also your W applies, the on-hit damage applies on all of your bolts as well. So it's a lot of that spit going around to everybody in a team fight. So that really gives him some hard domination in team fights, and it's 2,600 gold as well. So you've got two 2,600 gold items that just give you an incredible power spike once you complete them. Now, Blade of the Ruined King is kind of in there as well. People are getting it. You see, it does have about the same win rate as Gensu's. I will say, I don't think I'm as big of a fan of this item, though. Just because it's a lot more gold. It's 3,300 gold. It's going to take you much longer to proc this. Yes, I guess in a difficult lane, maybe you can get this because it does have the Vamp Scepter, and that does feel good with being able to sustain, especially with potions not being as valuable and stuff like that right now. So I can see it. It's just, you could have already had, like, been a third of the way towards your Hurricane, if you went Gensu's first. So it is expensive. They did buff it fairly recently. The range is 8%. I don't remember what they buffed on it, but it was something. It does help you with your movement speed a little bit. Like, it's not horrible. I just don't think it's, just because of the timing of it, I just don't think that it's going to be as powerful as Gensu's is in a lot of situations. So, and also, you can go for Titanic, which I've seen this as pretty popular too, as a third item. That's going to give you a lot of health, and it synergizes super well with Runins because each one of your little bolts is going to apply that Titanic splash as well. So now you've got your poison on all of the bolts, and you've got the splash damage from Titanic on all of your bolts as well. And that splash can hit multiple people. And of course, the Hurricane is hitting multiple people. It's just incredibly powerful to have that synergy with him. You could also do like Wit's End if you needed that. Gives you the magic resist, and then it's going to give you some movement speed and a little bit of magic damage. But I really like the Titanic if you can get it. The main problem, of course, is it's super expensive. So that's the problem. Now, Blade plus Gensu's, that does work too, right? Each one of the bolts does apply the Blade of the Ruined King passive as well. So there are a lot of choices. I mean, if you do go Gensu's, it does convert the 20% crit over to on hit, which is preferable on Kogmaw. So I just feel like that synergy is better, but they do have about the same win rate. So either way, very strong. Curiously, it does look like his win rate does go down over time, when historically he's thought to be a very good high scaling champion. I guess it's because a lot of the dive comps come online and can take care of him late game. But that is really weird, because you would think it would almost be the inverse with a high scaling champ like Kog. But anyways, I think he deserves a top spot. I mean, I could see him at the top of A in some situations, but especially if you put him together with something like a Renata or a Lulu or a Janna, just something that can really protect him or buff him up. He's just really, really good. Like, the enemy has to answer him. He's just going to melt everybody if they don't. Okay, Twitch, very similar to Kogmaw, and I could see maybe putting Twitch in S tier as well. I had Cog. Cog has a little bit of a higher win rate. And I think Cog's itemization, like I said, that's the huge part of it, is the 2,600 gold items you can get on Kogmaw. Just gets him online faster. But Twitch is incredibly powerful. Don't doubt the Twitch. He's a big deal. So it's the standard stuff. You know, invisible champion. If he gets ahead, he can roll up. Nobody ever respects it and just snowball out of control. If he gets a few kills, he can roam middle, he can roam jungle, he can even roam to his own lane, where a lot of times people won't suspect that he's going to be there after back timings and such. So a real terror with the invisibility, and then also with his R, really big range, really big damage. I think they gave him 10 extra AD bonus on his ult a few patches ago, and that has helped him out a lot. And then, of course, your Contaminate, even while you're laning, if you're able to throw, like, your Poison Cask on somebody in a fight, you know, if your Nautilus, Rakan, Leona, whatever, gets on somebody, and then you throw the cask on them and start auto-attacking, you can do quite a bit of damage if you have the right setup and you hold them still for long enough, right? That Contaminate does a lot if you get a ton of stacks in the early game. So he can surprise you and throw out a little damage. And then late game, of course, you get to just hang out in the back, invisible, just wait for the enemy to use a few cooldowns, and then just open up and delete everybody. So not much has changed in terms of his profile. I think the AP version is decidedly pretty bad these days. I know people were messing around with that for a while. Yeah, it seems significantly worse. Like, the big problem with the AP version is that death cap is such a pain in the butt to get because you need 2 rods. And then it has a massive combined cost as well. So it just doesn't allow for very good back timings. And I think just doesn't scale as well as a lot of the crit builds. Now, he does have several different options for opener items you can get. Blade of the Ruined King is a pretty common one. It might be the best. Well, debatable. I think a lot of people like Blade, just like I was talking about with Cog, because it has the Vamp Scepter. And Vamp Scepter feels good in the laning phase. You're like, okay, I can sustain through this stuff. I'm not going to get poked out as easily. But realistically, I mean, you got to ask yourself, it's okay if you're getting poked a little bit. If you were going to back anyways, you know, it really doesn't matter if you have that sustain if you weren't going to die anyways. So it could be one of those sort of placebo things that feels really good, but may not actually affect your back timings or your lanings that much if you, or your how you're laning that much, right? If it's not making a meaningful impact on those back timings, if you're not getting pushed off of waves. So it is nice. Lifesteal is a real thing, but if you're giving up a lot of damage to get this, then that could be a problem. So it is good on Twitch. The fact that he can trigger that life siphon and steal the movement speed when he comes out of invisibility, make sure that people aren't going to be able to run away from him as easily, can be pretty good. Dealing the current health is good, but if they don't have a lot of tanks, and especially if you're not getting Hurricane, a lot of people are going to get Hurricane on him anyways. Like, it is good. It is a good item. It's a good choice. But Kraken is also really good. You know, you get extra AD on that item. You don't have the lifesteal, but you get crit, which is really nice. Don't forget that Twitch's ultimate can crit. The bolts off of Hurricane can crit. It just got a bunch of extra bonus AD on the ultimate, right? So, you know, that's going to benefit crit even more. And then, of course, you have the third attack doing that extra true damage. So this is arguably even going to be better against tanks than Blade of the Ruined King is, because it's true damage versus magic damage. And there's so much, or I guess physical damage. Yeah, physical damage on him. But it's just something to think about. Now, Hurricane bolts, or these Kraken, that does not apply with Hurricane. Each person getting hit does not get Kraken bolts on them. So it doesn't synergize as well with Hurricane in a team fight situation as Blade of the Ruined King does. So that is one thing to keep in mind. And then Gale Force is kind of sleeper here. It has a higher win rate though, so it's definitely important to keep a look at it. But this is basically if you're snowballing and you just want to hard dominate people on those openers, right? If you just want to come in, open up on them, do a hell of a lot of damage, and then use that Gale Force to just basically execute them or gap close so that you can get that one final auto attack after they flash away. So I've seen Gale Force work pretty well. It's going to be a lot worse in team fights, but it does help you assassinate and blow people up. The little dash can be helpful too for dodging things like a Bard ult, a Leona ult, that kind of stuff. So it's situational, but it's worth thinking about. But I think the traditional wisdom of just going like Blatherin King into Hurricane into, you know, something else, Collector or Dom's Infinity Edge, like all those are pretty good. It looks like Lord Dom's is significantly worse than the other ones. All the other ones are like 60% win rate. So yeah, you do have a few different options, but it's still the same Twitch has been for years for the most part. Okay, Samira is another one that I really like, and that a lot of it is because they've nerfed Grievous Wound so much, and I think that the lifesteal items are still really OP on her. So just being able to go like Shield Bow early on is still going to be incredibly powerful. They did nerf something about it. I think they nerfed the lifesteal by like 1% or something. They maybe nerfed the shield a little bit, but it's still just so strong because all she needs to do is just live and get her passive stacked up and then just press ult and it just refills her health bar like instantly, right? Once you get Conquer, once you get, you know, Shield Bow activated and you get the extra lifesteal and all that stuff, you just end up just annihilating people in team fights. So she's very, very good against heavy melee teams where everyone's going to be stacked up, particularly teams that, you know, don't have a lot of damage, right? That aren't going to be able to lock her up, especially. So, and she dives really well. So, like, if you have a dive comp, if you have a, you know, Rakan, Leona, Nautilus, whatever, and you're just trying to get on that back line and delete everybody, she can be very, very good at that. So I think she's really underrated. It does look like Collector has a really high win rate, although it's a small sample size first item. Most people are still just going to go Shield Bow. But Collector is very nice because it just gives you a really high probability you're going to get those executes. You're going to get that gold because your ultimate just checks so frequently. It's like every 0.25 seconds or something in order for you to ensure you're going to get those last hits, right? So that your support doesn't accidentally take them. So yeah, just incredibly strong, has multiple options. You can't even go Bloodthirster if you really want to triple down on the lifesteal. Bloodthirster plus Shield Bow really means you're not going to die. And you can go for a defensive boot with her too, right? So you don't need to go Berserker's Greaves. I wouldn't do it most of the time. Just her ability to go for something like Steel Caps or Mercury Treads and get the Immortal Shield Bow, like have the shield there. It just makes her very durable for an ADC. So really good team fighter. Doesn't have as much in the way of wave clear. Can be a little vulnerable to poke in the laning phase, right? She does have her little swirl or whatever to help with engages, most engages, but she can get kind of pushed in by things like Sivir and Misfortune early on. So you really want to pair her together with an all-in dive champion if you can get one of those. So she's not going to be as good with enchanters, but if you put her with a Leona, Nautilus, Rakan, something like that, she can probably do pretty well. Okay. Now, Draven is another one, and I could have put Draven up a little bit more, but again, he's going to pair really well with these kill lanes. And his win rate's up. You know, he's one of the highest win rate ADCs right now. Yeah, he's not that great in team fights, but you know what? He does a lot of damage in the early game, and so much of the game right now is dominated by early game pressure and then just grabbing those dragons, you know, roaming mid, getting deep wards in the enemy jungle, just being able to take over the game early is becoming increasingly important. And the big item on him is Essence Reaver. Not everyone does this, but there's a massive, massive difference if you do Essence Reaver versus almost any other item, right? So like Essence Reaver is almost a 55% win rate, and if you just go for Eclipse, that's only a 50% win rate. That's the number 2 item. Now, Kraken is okay. I still think that's a little curious because with Draven, you really just want to blow them up, right? Like 1 or 2 autos, they're at 50% health or less, right? They're almost dead after a couple of autos, and then, you know, just ultimate to clean them up. So Draven's all about that burst damage because his sustained damage in team fights is questionable because he doesn't have anything that's multi-target other than his ult. So you really just want to blow people up early and make sure you're cashing in. And Essence Reaver, I just think, is the best one. Kind of like Kogmaw, it's cheap on the curve, right? It's not 2,600, but it's 2,800, which is still a lot cheaper than like 3,400 for a lot of the ADC items. And it's really nice because you get critical strike, attack damage, and you get the Sheen proc. So that's really nice when you just activate one of your spinning axes to trigger the Sheen. auto attack them, does a ton of damage, and then as long as you just keep catching those axes and just keep running them down, you can constantly keep activating it. Whenever, because I think whenever you activate his W or something and you catch an axe, it like resets the cooldown, or every time you catch an axe, it resets the cooldown on the W. Yeah. So in theory, if you want to, you can keep spamming this, and it will keep giving you more Sheen procs over and over again. So obviously that's going to be really good. I mean, it'll drain your mana, but who cares, right? If you get like 3 autos with Sheen procs on them, you're going to blow them up. So he starts off with a ton of AD as well, and he scales really well with bonus AD. But as you can see, he kind of falls off a cliff. So you really need to take over the game early. But he definitely has the tools to do it. So other than that, I think I would probably just go Essence Reaver, Collector, and then maybe like Infinity Edge or something like that after that. Just those big hard-hitting items. I'm just not a believer in this. This is like a utility, like get a little shield. I mean, the lethality is nice. Like, being able to get a Dirk early is nutty on Draven. So, I could even see getting a Dirk and then going over to Essence Reaver and then later changing that Dirk into Collector. Just because Dirk is such a stupid item, like, cost-efficient-wise. It's 1,100 gold. You get 30 attack power. So, that right there is almost 1,000 gold. I think that's like 1050 gold. My math might be a little off there, but I think that's 1050 gold for the attack power. And so you're paying 50 gold for 10 lethality, which is insane on an item. So yeah, that looks like what a lot of people do is they'll go Dirk and then Sheen, and then that's going to give you kind of your maximum, just blow them up ASAP, and then you complete your Essence Reaver after that. So yeah, Draven, still going to be pretty strong. Jinx has fallen down a little bit, in my opinion, just because she doesn't come online quite as fast. She needs a couple of items. Most of the champions that I've mentioned so far do start blasting a lot earlier, but she still takes over the game late. I mean, her win rate is not phenomenal right now. And it's funny because everyone says, you know, in pro, everyone just sits around and just scales for late. I mean, maybe that was a couple of patches ago. Hopefully it's changing. But I'm seeing people picking a lot of early game stuff, like Callista, Renata, a lot of things like that being popular. But anyways, Jinx is okay. She just, like I said, needs a few more items. Not a lot has changed. She still has to get Kraken early, which is 3,400 gold. It is expensive, but it's still a powerful item. She doesn't have any sustain, and she doesn't have, like, fantastic poke to leverage the fact that the enemy doesn't have a lot of sustain. So I think she can just fall victim to stuff like getting pushed in by Sivir, getting pushed in and bullied by Misfortune. But if you do get a couple of kills and you start snowballing, then she does scale about as well or better than most champions in the game. And you see here, it's kind of not great, but if you just make it to 35 minutes, then you can kill everybody. But yeah, she's okay. I think tier 2 is fair. I could see someone putting her in tier 3 if they really wanted to. But the fact that everyone else is also kind of bad at this point and lower, and the fact that she at least scales really well, she does have some wave clear, right, with her rockets. It's okay. You got the chompers to help protect you. You can almost always snipe 1 or 2 free kills with her rockets. Like, she still does stuff. Like, she's still reasonable in a lot of situations. So I just don't think you can put her much lower than tier 2. Although, again, I wouldn't be completely shocked if some people had her a little bit lower than that. Okay. But it's just really that consistency. Like, you know you're going to be powerful at some point. You can kind of just, you've got long range. You can kind of just hang out and just try to, you know, wave clear for a little while and just hope that you catch that one good team fight where you get, you know, multiple kills because you can snowball really well. Okay, Neela. Still haven't seen or played with a lot of Neelas. And I've seen inconsistent results. So that's why I've got her down here. I mean, she could be as high as S tier, potentially. She does have a good win rate. If you have a dive champ, you know, like a Nautilus, Leona, Rakan, that type of stuff. If you have a dive champ, I think she can be incredibly powerful if you just get in their face and you can blow them up. But she can be vulnerable to a lot of these poke. If you have like an enchanter with her, she can be vulnerable to a lot of poke champs on the enemy team. So again, I'm not like super familiar with her, but as you can see, she's definitely been trending down. I know she did get hot nerfed a couple of times. but she still has a pretty high win rate. You just kind of got to take over early, and I feel like you really need those dive champs to go with her. It looks like a lot of people are kind of doing shield bow on her. I mean, that makes sense because you have to get close. You're probably going to, you know, get hit by a lot of things. You don't want to die. So that's good. I'm kind of surprised something like Gale Force doesn't do better with her, since she does want to dive and she does want to execute. Essence Reaver has a pretty high win rate, although it's a very low sample size. So again, I really don't know a ton. Like, I'm not an expert on Nilo. Like I said, I've only seen it a couple of times. I haven't watched a ton of guides on it or anything. But my sense is that if you have a dive comp, especially in the bot lane, if you're starting off with someone who can dive and you can snowball, then she can do a lot of damage. Okay. Tristana, I think, is really underrated. Again, she's another one where you need to snowball early, but she does have that potential there. And I think her win rate's like not horrible. It's like 50.5%. But she's kind of like an old school, lots of utility, but she's very aggressive. You can take over, you know, in the early game with those rocket jumps. As soon as you hit level 2 and you've got that bomb, you know, you just jump in there, go in, especially if you have the Leona, the Nautilus, the Rakan. You go in, drop the bomb, use that Hail of Blades to trigger it, get those 4 stacks as fast as possible to get that extra jump activation, and then just jump on them again. And that's really, really hard. Like, they're going to have to flash level 2 most of the time if you have that, or they're just going to have to back way the hell off really early and just give you lane priority. Because she will delete people quickly, and once she gets those kills, then she does start taking over the game. So, pretty good there. Kraken, very strong with Halo Blades. Again, you're just trying to focus down, kill that single target, snowball. She does do a lot of damage to towers as well with the E, so it's really easy to get a plate and get a really preferable back timing after you get some of those kills. And the W is really good at repositioning too, right? If you're going to get ganked, because not only is it a dash, but it's also basically a CC immunity. If you don't know, like, whenever she crouches down to do her jump, she's immune to CC. So they call that buffering. So basically, even if like a Blitzcrank hook hits her right when she's about to jump, she will not get hooked. It's a really weird, janky spaghetti code from Season 1. They just never changed. But really good Tristana players, you'll see them do this constantly when they're about to get hit by something. Nautilus, Blitz, Thresh, whatever. Then she'll just be able to jump through it and still get away. It's absolutely infuriating as a support. I see her, she does that to me all the time. If I try to go in with R and then W when she has that up, she'll just jump right through the charm, and it's obnoxious. Now, when she's in the air, after her feet actually leave the ground, you can CC her. So it's just all about that timing where you have to wait for her to go in the air and then hit her with whatever you're doing. And then she also has her R, which does a lot of damage in the early game. 300 damage is more than most ultimates in the game at level 1. Now, the scaling is not great. It does have a 100% AP ratio, but don't build AP on her, please. But it's a lot of base damage. So it's, again, really, really good at executing people. Once you get the Hail of Blades, the bomb, and especially Kraken going, you can delete people really quickly. And it's a good peel tool, right? So not only can you jump back, 900 yards to get away from someone trying to dive you, but you can also R to push them back, and she gets pretty long range late game. So she's a terror to try to dive. She can really, take care of herself in a lot of situations. And then, of course, if you get a kill or an assist, then you get a reset on the jump, which means you can either jump forward aggressively to go for more kills, or you can use that jump to kite more if you need to. If you got an Olaf running at you or something. So, really good, pretty versatile champion. The only problems with her is she has no on-hit modifiers, so she doesn't have any percentage health damage, no true damage, and she doesn't have any sort of AoE abilities. The closest you're going to get is the bomb blowing up can hit multiple people, but she just doesn't synergize super well because of that. She doesn't synergize with Hurricane, she doesn't synergize with Gensu's, or just a lot of these other kind of cheaper items that some of these other champs can use. But I think she is pretty good. Okay, and then we have Kaisa. Now, I personally am not a huge fan of Kaisa, but I will mention her here. I know Dynasty loves Kaisa, and Dynasty is very good on Kaisa. Long time sort of viewer of the channel, for those of you that don't know, that I have duoed with occasionally. But I just don't. She's short range. She takes multiple items to come online, in my opinion. She is good with dive comps. If you're able to dive and get on that back line, that can be really good. I think she does go Dirk early, and then Kraken, and then Collector. But my thing is, it's just so hard to do anything with her. Like, her wave clear with, like, just an unevolved Q is okay, but it's not fantastic. Again, short range, like, your poke is okay. Your E is an okay dash, but it's sort of slow, too, in some cases. But once you do get your R with a dive comp, if you can get those isolations, once you get this area to Dirk, once you're able to get that Q evolved, you can blow people up pretty quickly. So if you know what you're doing, again, if you have those dive champs, Nautilus, Leona, all that stuff, she's good. Gonna be bad with enchanters, I think, or not as good. You're just gonna get run over in the laning phase if you can't put up any pressure. So you really want her in a dive comp, and preferably you want like some jungle attention, from your side, not their side, early on, so that you can make some plays, snowball, and get that Q evolved, get to level 6 ASAP. So I just think she's going to get bullied a lot of the time, and it's going to be very difficult to contest that first dragon if you're playing Kaisa. And I just think if you want to play something that's going to get bullied where you're going to try to scale, I'd probably rather just play Cog, Twitch, or Jinx. Her range is just so low compared to them. Like, each of these champions gets up to like 800-something range with lethal tempo. And Kaisa's just going to be chilling at like 525. So it's like, yeah, the diving to the backline skirmishing is good if you catch someone out in like a 2v2 or maybe a little 3v3 skirmish, but in a 5v5, diving that backline, it's a different story. It can be very scary, in a lot of situations. Okay, and then I'll just go through the rest of these kind of quickly just because I don't want this to be too long. So Caitlyn, I think, can be good. Caitlyn is still pretty high skill cap, surprisingly. You wouldn't think it'd be that hard because it just seems like you just auto-attack over and over again. But there's so many Caitlyns that just do not land the traps. Like, you get the CC on them, somehow they miss the trap, right? Or they just don't even put traps down. The traps are the entire thing with Caitlyn. Like, it improves your damage astronomically. And where you're placing those traps is huge. You can use them defensively so that the enemy can't really dive onto you as easily. You can put them under tower, the enemy tower, to make it very difficult for the enemy to last hit. So if you're using those traps properly and you use your net and you're able to react so the enemy can't dive on you, she's incredibly difficult to interact with. So she has a lot of those defensive tools there, but a lot of people just don't use them. They have nerfed her wave clear some with her Q. Her itemization is not fantastic. It's okay. Again, she has to get the expensive items. She really needs multiple items to scale. But she does put up pressure in the early game. She does have really long auto attack range. If you do take fleet footwork, that will allow you to sustain through a lot of the poke. You can do lethal tempo if you want to scale for late, but she doesn't scale super well with attack speed. So she's okay. If you're a really good Caitlyn, you can definitely make her work, but there are a lot of people that have problems with her. Now, Kalista, I think, is getting played a lot in Pro. I personally don't like her very much in solo queue, at least at Platinum and lower. It's because she takes so long to start doing anything. Let me pull this up, just because I know people pick her a lot, but I'm not sure what her actual win rate is. Yeah, so people are playing her a lot in Pro, and she's getting banned a lot, but she's bad in Pro too, right? She's 42% win rate in Pro. So let me see, who are the most picked here? There we go. So yeah, not very powerful. Like, you see her a lot, you see her banned, you see her picked a lot, but the win rate's not really that good. It's Sivir that's the one that's OP if you look at those stats, and Siri to a lesser extent. Draven also is putting on a pretty good show, but yeah, she takes a long time to stick those spears. You really have to like leverage her mobility to take over. She doesn't scale particularly well later on into the game. It's because it takes so much time to stick all those spears. People play her specifically with Renata because that buys you time if you die to wake up and stick more spears and then get just enough to get that kill. Because she's very much an all or nothing ADC, right? Either you're killing them with your E, with your execute, or you're not doing anything with your spears. If they kill you before you E, before you get that execute, then they just didn't take any damage. So it's extremely risky, and you have to play her a lot, and you have to have a really good sense of when you have enough spears to kill them at different item thresholds, at different HP thresholds they might be at, even at different armor thresholds they might be at. And that's a lot of variables to keep track of when you don't have a lot of good visual indicators of that, right? When you're playing a normal ADC and you see their health bar going down, it's easier to get a sense of, hey, I can kill this person right now, right? If I use this ability, or if I can just last for another 2 seconds. With Kalista, it's a lot more sketchy, because it's like, all right, they're at 70% health, but I've got 15 spears in them right now. Can I kill them? Right? And so it's just different from a lot of other champs, and you just really have to, you know, just get practice with it. So I just don't like her that much. Like, on paper, it seems good. You know, she fits the early pressure, good utility, right? She can use her ultimate to help engage champions go in. But in reality, I think a lot of people just don't play her well enough at lower ranks. And even at pro, people don't play her well enough. They think they do, but they don't. You know, the famous saying there. Okay. Ezreal's okay. I think Essence Reaver Ezreal is pretty good. It's the same kind of thing with Draven. You just want that early power. A lot of people still go like Muramana on him. I think like a Dustblade build could be good. I haven't seen people do it, but like an early Serrated Dirk or something, maybe on Ezreal, wouldn't be horrible. The problem with that is his W is usually a pretty big part of the all-in damage, and so is his R if you hit him with it, and those are magic damage that doesn't get affected by lethality. So, I don't know. He just doesn't do a lot early, and his wave clear is horrible. It just feels very bad in a meta where you want to be able to contest those dragons. So yeah, I just don't like him. If you're a really good Ezreal, you can make it work, but he was good a few patches ago. But I think since the durability changes, it's a lot harder on him now. Okay, Ashe. I think Ashe support is okay, but I don't like Ashe's ADC, and the main reason is she just doesn't do enough damage. Like, the support Ashe can take, like, you can get Mandate early, you can take Comet, and that gives you, like, really nice poke in the laning phase, and then you get a really good engage tool with that R if you hit it all the time. But you're not expected to do a ton of personal damage as support, right? But as ADC, you need to do a lot of damage. Especially if you have some kind of utility jungler like a Poppy or, you know, something like that on your team who's very popular right now. You need to be able to do that damage, and she just doesn't scale as well as most other ADCs. She does still have the R, that is good, but she's just kind of a sitting duck for engage too. She has no dashes. I'm not a big fan. Lucian is okay. I think if you say Lucian plus Nami, you could have Lucian maybe in A tier, but I think especially without Nami, he does have the early game pressure, but he just falls off a cliff. It's just, he's just so short range, and he doesn't have like any real multi-target abilities. Like, his ultimate is okay with the R, but at the end of the day, he's just short range and just doesn't have the same kind of utility, doesn't have the same kind of poke as a lot of other champions do. He does do a lot of burst damage up front, especially with the Nami. If Nami goes electrocute and gets Mandate, you can definitely delete people, but you need to snowball and take over the game after that. Okay, last few. Varus I've seen some Varus do okay, but I still think you're working uphill with that champion. The best builds I've seen are kind of these just attack speed, on-hit builds, like a Blade of the Ruined King, Hurricane, you know, Ginsu or Wit's End, like that type of situation. You do have your ultimate for some CC, and he does work okay with on-hit damage. They did buff his W a little bit, but I'm still not a huge believer in most people playing Varus. Vayne, don't like it. She just doesn't do anything in the early game. Yes, she can smash tanks later on if she gets like 3 or 4 items, but she just takes way too long. She has no poke. She has no wave clear. Relies on attack speed, which is one of the worst stats in the game, early game. So, yes, Vaynes can pop off. They can take over the game. We've all seen it. But I just don't like it most of the time in most matchups. Xayah, I just think she needs too many expensive items and just doesn't do quite enough damage. She did rise to prominence earlier in the season with a lethality build, but they've nerfed her. They nerfed the Q damage like a lot, like 50 damage on the Q, so the lethality build doesn't work. That build made her a lot more viable because then she came online early, like once she gets that Dirk, because Dirk's OP, and you're maxing Q, you could do quite a lot of burst damage, which is hitting with a Q and auto attack and then your E with the lethality, and that gave you nice trading early and allowed you to scale up later without getting run over in the early game. But now she has to go crit again, and I just don't think the numbers are there. Great champion. I wish she was good. I wish she was back in the meta because I love to play Rakan a lot, but the numbers just aren't there, I don't think. And then Siri, this might be a little low for Siri. Maybe you could put her in like B or something. Obviously, she's doing very well in Pro at 54, but I just don't see her doing a lot in solo queue. I mean, maybe I feel like she's got like a super low run. Yeah, it's like 46% in solo queue. Now, win rates aren't everything, but when you see 46, like, that's pretty alarming. I just think that she just takes a really long time to come online. It takes so long to do damage in team fights. Yeah, she still has mobility. Like, there are, like, some things you can do with her, but I just think she's over-nerfed. I just don't see it. She does scale up as the game goes on, but again, a lot of this meta is shifting more towards an early game meta because of the new dragons. But this looks good until you realize, oh, she gets a about a 51% win rate at 35 minutes into the game, right? Which is where, you know, most of these ADCs I'm talking about are naturally at like minute 1 versus like minute 1, she's down at like 38% winner. So it's like, yes, this looks good, but it's because it's coming from an abysmal like rate, right? Like if this was a normal ADC, it would just be a flat line, right? It'd be like 51 all the way across. So yes, the chart looks good visually until you actually dig into those numbers a little bit more, and then you're just like, holy cow, she's that bad early on. So I don't know. Pros do really well with her. They seem to pick her a lot, but for some reason it just doesn't translate over to solo queue. Maybe you need more coordinated play. Maybe you just need higher APM, better skill, whatever it is. I don't know, but I just don't like her in solo queue that much. Last couple here, we've got Aphelios, just train wreck. Don't play that champ, man. Unless you're like a one trick. The big problem with Aphelios is he just requires a lot of team coordination. Like your team has to understand what your gun situation is, and they have to plan your engagements accordingly, right? Because if they start a fight, you've got the wrong gun, it's not going to be great. So obviously you really want to fight if you have like the red-white guns, but you know, if they're going in when you've got like purple-green or something like that, it's just really bad. So you have to manage your guns appropriately so that you're getting the right kind of guns at the right time. So you have to think, okay, dragon's coming up, so I need to make sure I've got red, white,
world leads to a brighter future. At Qualcomm, we're creating technology solutions to take on some of the world's biggest challenges.
So you have to coordinate it, but your
where
team
5G
also
and
has to
AI
understand
help bring individualized learning to students no matter where they are.
You know, you just...
And where 5G
so
and AI help enable personalized healthcare for more patients so they can get the care they need.
You're very vulnerable,
Join
kind of like
in
Ash.
creating
You have
a
no
world
dash,
that is more
no
intelligently
escapes,
connected.
like very low utility. Outside of like obviously with your ultimate, you can like chain CC people if you like ultimate with purple gun or something. Like there is some utility, but you're just a sitting duck for a lot of junglers or engaged supports. So I'm not a big fan. Again, obviously he's super popular in Pro. His win rate is okay considering that level of popularity in Pro, because that means most people are probably blind picking him. He's kind of the default blind picks. You can give him a couple of win percentage points there just because he's just going to get counterpicked sometimes, but in solo queue I don't like it. Senna, I think she's good as a support, but the numbers are just too low, I think, as ADC. The big thing about support is you're getting a lot of free souls, and that gives you a lot of free money and allows you to scale. But when you're ADC, you're not going to be getting those souls as often, and just her normal scaling is not as good as the other. And I just absolutely hate Seraphine on my as an ADC on my team. I think that she is like good as a support, but man, you just need to do damage. Like you need to hard carry. You can't count on your team to carry you when you're playing the ADC role, I don't think. Is she being played in Pro anymore? I mean, marginally, right? She got 23 games. I guess that's 37%. That's presence, though. With a 52% win rate. So it's like, it looks okay, but guys, just don't do it. If you love Seraphine, just play her in support. She's fine as support. Even maybe mid, maybe. But as ADC, I just do not like it. I guess she's got a 52%. I don't know. Maybe I'm just a hater. She does have a higher win rate than many of the other ADCs, but I guess she's okay if you have, you know, really good hard carries you can trust on the rest of your team. But I just feel like I lose almost every game where Seraphine's on my team just because we just don't have the damage to make it work. But I don't know. Maybe all the way down there is a little bit harsh. Maybe we'll pop her over here. We'll pop her in a D. We'll make her conditional. But yeah, I can't go any higher than that. Anyways, that's gonna be it. Thank you very much. Be sure to like and subscribe. Really helps out a ton on the channel. Helps the content out a lot. And then be sure to check out the support tier list as well. I'll have a link to that again at the end of the video. And I'm going to see if I can do some other tier lists throughout the week as well. I know I haven't been as consistent with my content lately, but I'm going to try to get back to it. I'm going to try to get back to giving you guys the good content. But anyways, and check out the stream as well. Like I said, it starts around 10 or 11 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Usually goes till 2 or 3 a.m. And I'll see you next time. Have a good day.